Oh, my children, I have heard amongst you rumors most disturbing. Some claim that those faithful to our good lords and deities are nothing more than heel bots, support sticks, and cheerleaders. Well, let us pray together and find solace. Everyone, look down and open your books to Chapter 1 of How to Build a Practical Cloistered Cleric Guide at the Church of Practical Pathfinder. Those faithful amongst you will recognize that the cleric stands out among its peers as an excellent and powerful caster. Your divine font trait naturally gives you 4 to 6 maximum rank heal spells, but you need not handle only healing. You'll find amongst your divine spells amazing buffs and decent AoE and debuff spells, particularly quite a few attack spells that additionally debuff your foes. Let all give praise. From there, your rank 1 spells are quite excellent, and your high wisdom stat will naturally make you a good choice for a healer. The medicine skill frees us from the trappings of bringing more and more castings of the heal spell. Additionally, this may be true for any class, but the player's guide calls out that one example of a cleric refocusing is a cleric who refocuses while treating the wounds of their teammates out of combat. You know what that means? That means, by the rules as written, a cleric can refocus while healing their teammates with medicine. You love to see that. Talk about value. It's not all great, though. The Divine List is often maligned, and while its first rank spells have incredible versatility, the spells as a whole are weaker until rank 4. Ranks 2 and 3 Divine spells are not impressive. Additionally, as a Cloistered Cleric, you are a bit fragile until you get your hands on the Armor Proficiency General Feat. The lack of armor means a lower armor class, and any caster at best is a little bit squishy. The focus spells of a cleric are only okay. They're nice to have in a pinch, but they're not taking home any medals, and your damage options, again, are pretty lacking before rank 4. Last, I would just like to point out again, it is a common flaw I've seen amongst our faithful that clerics often bring more and more castings of heal. It's such a powerful spell, a big bomb of HP for a friend in need. But be warned, if you do nothing but bring heal spells, your teammates will naturally fall into the habit of expecting you to do nothing but cast heal. They'll take extra damage and not see a need to defend themselves or take the steps to avoid pain. The best way to avoid this is yourself. Don't take more castings of the heal spell than your divine font naturally provides. The divine font gives you 4 max ranks heal spells, 5 at level 5. Frankly, that should be enough. Now, while any of us are worthy of joining the faithful and becoming a skilled cleric, there are some that naturally have some advantages. In this case, I have to call out our common human brethren. Their stats might be nothing to sneeze at, but the Natural Ambition feat and access to Versatile Human allows any Cloistered Cleric to start with Armor Proficiency for a chain shirt to protect themselves, thanks to Versatile Human, and Natural Ambition gives you a pick of Cleric's excellent, build-defining even, first rank feats. You might have mediocre mid-level feats, but your first ranks are very competitive, and Human can get a lot of advantage there. Outside of that, Dwarf is a classic priest pick. They're durable with a high wisdom and constitution stat. They used to be awkward with a poor charisma, but in the reworked cleric in Player Core 1, that's no longer a problem. Dwarf away and you'll be a happy camper. For those not a fan of dwarves, you can also look into Leshy. They have the exact same advantages, but instead of a poor charisma, they have a poor intelligence. Consider which mental stat you want to go for your build and character and pick accordingly. When it comes to the stats of any cleric, you're always going to want to max out your wisdom stat. This is your primary casting stat and will determine the strength of pretty much every major action you will take throughout your career. So we're going to need a maxed out +4 wisdom pretty much no matter what. And outside of that, try and increase your dex to +3 if you can. +2 is manageable if your background or ancestry doesn't allow for a maxed out dex and wisdom stat. You should sacrifice dex and go to a +2 dex to keep your wisdom high. Outside of that, you're going to want to up your con because you are a healer, and if you're not durable and you go down to a hit, who's going to save you? Good luck. And this frees up 1 stat boost for either intelligence or charisma, depending on what kind of person you want to be, what kind of character you are. It's entirely roleplay based, but consider your party and talk to them and see what you're missing. Do you need a smart person in the team, or do you need a talkative and charismatic person in the team? Choose accordingly. Now, it comes to equipment. As a cleric and as a full caster, you don't have as much need for equipment as some of your more combat-focused friends. You'll want scrolls. As any caster, scrolls are your best friend, giving you versatility, options in downtime, and frankly, if you need gas in the tank on a long day, scrolls are a cheap and effective way to have that. Outside of that, casters can use shields. You might not be a Warpriest, but a shield is still a great pick. And if you choose to take the Raise Symbol feat at level 4, your shield will up your armor class and all of your saving throws, which is just incredible value. No one else gets that so easily. Beyond that, you're going to want to change shirt once you get armor proficiency from your general feat. And outside of that, maybe more scrolls. Besides scrolls, consider picking up an Endless Grimoire. As a prepared caster, an Endless Grimoire will give you a couple more spells per day, though it is a very expensive way to get it. And if you want better cantrip damage at the lower levels, consider a level 3 Jolt Coil. The Jolt Coil gives you access to the Electric Arc cantrip, one of the best and premier damage cantrips that hit 2 targets for solid electricity damage. It covers a weak spot in the Divine list, and you'll appreciate it, though cantrips naturally fall off as you gain levels. If you're past level 7, I would say, you could get a Jolt Coil, but the benefits are marginal at that point. Maybe just pick up more scrolls. When it comes to skills for a cleric, you might not have many skill proficiencies unless you increase your intelligence quite a bit, but the skills you have are going to be all-stars. As a high wisdom character, you're naturally good at the medicine skill. If you choose to increase this, you can refocus while also healing your teammates, and now you don't need to spend the heal spell, not nearly as badly. So again, take that opportunity to not memorize heal. I will stress this throughout the whole video. Stop taking heal and start taking real power bombs of spells that you can find in the Divine list. It'll be worth it, and you'll end your fights sooner and faster, which means less need for healing in the first place. Outside of that, you're naturally good at the religion skill because, well, you are a cleric, you know, you're a religious priest, so religion's probably a good idea, and the acrobatic skill is a very good choice for any caster. You do need to escape grapples and the occasional monster who will swallow you whole and attempt to digest you. Acrobatics gives you a safer way to escape those grabs and get to safety. You don't necessarily need it, but good luck. Beyond that, nature as another wisdom skill you are quite proficient at recall knowledge with, and outside of that, your decent dexterity is going to up your stealth and your thievery, so if you don't have a thief character or a rogue in your party, it's an option. While clerics don't get many skill feats, they can provide considerable value thanks to the power of wisdom skills. Anyone taking medicine can take the classic power trio of battle medicine for in-combat heal bombs, fantastic for saving downed allies or people who just need that little top-off from one action, ward medic to heal multiple teammates out of combat at once, and continual recovery so you can keep healing your teammates and save a lot of time. Talk to your party and make sure someone else isn't going for ward medic and continual recovery, particularly any rogues or investigators. If they are, then you won't need those, but consider taking battle medicine anyways. More is always better. From there, Advanced First Aid for those medicine experts can reduce the sickened and frightened conditions on friends. This is a nice way to support your team mid-combat if they get hit by a nasty debuff. Outside of that, those who increase Religion have 2 solid options at Master rank, level 7 by the earliest, in both Battle Prayer and Sacred Defense. Sacred Defense lets you give yourself a little bit of temp health, no reason to say no, whereas Battle Prayer lets you do a little bit of damage for free. Well, 1 action at least. Now, Battle Prayer has not been remastered, so as you read it, you'll notice it does alignment damage. Talk to your game master if they're okay with it, doing spirit damage instead. Every remastered thing that did alignment damage has been changed to do spirit damage, so that would be fitting with the system. Oh, finally the feats, the heart of the build. I know you've been waiting. Cleric is a very interesting character and class in that many of Cleric's early low-level feats are incredibly impactful to its playstyle and build, but at the same time, its mid-level feats and high-level feats are only okay. The highest level feats are excellent, but from anywhere levels 8 to 14, they're like alright. You can skip them quite easily and go for archetype feats if that's more your style. With that said, at low levels, we have our level 2 feats. You're competing between Versatile Font, Healing Hands, and Emblazoned Armament. They're all strong picks no matter what you want. Versatile Font lets you do both heal and harm with your Divine Font. If you tend not to heal as often and want to be more aggressive, this is a great pick. Similar, if you want to take the Cast Down feat at level 6 to knock enemies prone, Versatile Font is a fantastic pick to support that. If you just enjoy casting heal spells and protecting your friends, Healing Hands makes all of your heal spells just a little bit better, going to D10s. Hard to say no to just a raw stat increase on your most powerful spell. That's nice. And last, we have Emblazoned Armament. While not impressive at level 2, it lets you take one teammate and empower either their weapon or their shield and make it just a little bit better. This sets you up for level 8 when you can take the Emblazoned Energy feat, which adds some elemental damage to the weapon. That is where Emblazoned Armament gets really good and it's fantastic value. Consider your team and consider yourself which of these 3 routes sounds good for you to start. At level 4, you get the access to Raise Symbol. Raise Symbol is a very powerful feat that lets you for 1 action increase all your saving throws by 2. That's nice, but at low levels, I know you're thinking, Lord Generic, most things use strikes at low levels. This is only good at mid and high levels. Well, you can put your symbol onto a shield and raise the shield to get both the armor class and saving throw benefit. That makes Cleric one of the best shield users in the entire game. Not what you'd expect from a caster, but wow, the durability is very appreciated. Now by level 6, our Cleric feats have already kind of dropped off in general value and have become more build specific. Don't be surprised if you want to go into archetypes and fund something more unique to your character. Otherwise, Cast Down at level 6 is fantastic for Versatile Font users and anyone who memorizes the Harm spell. It allows you to spend an extra action to knock an enemy prone if they take damage from harm. Being able to knock someone prone is serious value, quite frankly, and your team will love you for it. For those with Healing Hands, you could consider the Magic Hands feat. What this does is it massively powers up your healing output from treat wounds out of combat using your medicine skill. Though I caution you to consider that this isn't really a power increase. What this feat does is that Magic Hands is a time saver. If you can treat wounds faster and heal the party out of combat faster, you spend less downtime healing and more time pushing on. Should your game be one where time pressures are common and your ability to sit down and camp is limited, Magic Hands is worth considering. At level 8, we have fantastic choices with Advanced Domain. Now, it's hard to recommend a specific advanced domain spell because what domains you have is dependent on your deity, and as we mentioned, domain spells are like, okay, there's some good ones, but I can't say if it's worth it or not until we know who you worship and what domains are available. If you have a good advanced domain, definitely consider it. For those who took Emblazon Armament though, you really want Emblazon Energy at level 8. What Emblazon Energy does is allows you to either make a shield capable of blocking elemental damage, or you add elemental damage to a weapon. Now, if this elemental damage matches a focus spell damage type you have, such as Fire Ray from the Flame Domain if you worship Saren Ray, you gain 1d6 bonus damage, not 1d4. That is the damage equivalent of a 500 gold damage rune. You just jump-started your faithful friend's damage output. Your fighter, your barbarian, anyone else who worships the same deity is going to gain massive benefit, and you're just getting free damage every time they swing. Nice. Level 10 though, like, the feats aren't that great. For those who took Healing Hands, I would consider Heroic Recovery. This is a pretty nice feat, allowing you to spend one action to power up your heal spell and give small stat buffs to whoever you heal for one round. That's okay. The reason I really recommend it is it also lets them stand up from the prone condition for free. If any of your teammates tend to get knocked down, or even if someone is knocked unconscious, you can get them off the ground as part of your heal spell. That might save a life, and it might save your life if it means they can take down an enemy. Otherwise, level 10 feats are mediocre. Level 12, if you took the Raise Symbol feat, then you can get Sapping Symbol. As a reaction, if you get attacked, you can impose the enfeebled condition on them, which is very nice. I mean, it's an extra debuff, who's not going to say no? At level 14, consider Deity's Protection if you tend to use your focus spells in combat often. Deity's Protection gives you damage resistance to all damage when you cast a focus spell for one round. That's not necessarily the longest duration thing, but it's a nice passive effect, and as we mentioned earlier, the healer taking less damage, that's valuable. You don't want to go down in combat. You're very important and very valued. So level 16 though, this is where it is at. This is where Cleric's feats take off again in insane value. Eternal Blessing means you now have a permanent bless spell on you at all times. Now you might be saying, Lord Generic, Bless is a rank 1 spell. By level 16, I can carry 100 scrolls of it and it's practically free. Sure, but the actions to cast Bless are not free. Here, you have a constant to hit bonus at all times around you. You'll love it, your friends will love it, it frees up time, and it means you can spend your actual spells doing something else more valuable. At level 18, the Divine Apex feat is really good. What this does is it lets you turn any item into what's called an Apex item. Apex items are something you can only wear one of on a given character, but it increases one of your stats by +1. So you get the bonus increase, right? These items are incredibly expensive and are often the capstone of a character's loadout. This gives you one for free. That is tens of thousands of gold in your pocket. Sure, you could replicate this effect with pure money, but that much money? Oh, let's get a little creative and really get some value, huh? Level 20, Cleric feats are okay. It's pretty standard caster stuff. Consider Maker of Miracles for an extra 10th rank spell, though I don't consider 10th rank divine spells to even be that impressive, frankly. It's alright. Really, level 18 was where it was at. Now, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, spells! The real meat of any caster build. Know that as a cleric, you have a particular advantage when it comes to spells, in that you can change all of your prepared spells every morning to any other common divine spell. You may not get as many, but frankly, the Divine Font feature gives you 4 max rank heal spells for free. That goes up to 5, then 6 spells. That's more than enough power. So feel free to pick utility spells, pick buff spells, pick spells that seem interesting and just try them out. With that said, cantrips. These will be your bread and butter spammable spells, particularly at low levels. Levels 1 through 4, cantrips are fantastic and probably your main source of damage. You're best off using your rank 1 and rank 2 spells for good utility picks and value. Cantrips can do the heavy lifting. You might not have the highest damage cantrips on the divine list, but guidance is a great single target buff. It's one action to buff one action of a teammate. Add some value, and it's a nice third action after you cast a spell if you don't have to move or defend yourself. Similar, shield is a one action buff to yourself to increase your armor class, and you can cash it in for a shield block to reduce incoming damage a little bit. This loses value if you carry a physical shield on you, but you can still use it for the damage reduction. It's not a bad choice. And when it comes to attacking, needle darts or divine lance are a good starting choice. This is how you target armor class, and it's a nice single target damage pick. Needle darts hits a little harder, but divine lance is a better choice against most undead targets, particularly against any ghosts. Void warp and vitality lash are how you target fortitude. This is a saving throw spell. It does a little less damage than needle darts, but targeting a fortitude save means that you do half damage on your miss equivalent, and being able to know what your enemy is and decide or use recall knowledge to know, is their AC higher or is their fortitude higher? Target whichever they're weaker against and you'll come out on top. This is the power and privilege of a caster. Last, Haunting Him is a fairly unique cantrip, giving you a cone AoE. The damage isn't spectacular, but as an AoE spell, it's very, very good for taking out swarms, which are crowds of tiny enemies that all rush you at once. At low levels, swarms are very, very dangerous because your party has few options, and the low damage of a fighter at level 1 or 2 might mean they struggle to fight a swarm at all. Haunting Him might save someone's life. At rank 1, the divine list is actually very good. You only have a couple damage and offensive picks, being Sacred Beast, the very rare reflex targeting AoE. While a small AoE, that does make it easier to aim in tight dungeons, and it's the only reflex targeting spell you're going to get until, I think, rank 4 or 5. You might want to be upcasting Sacred Beast as you go through your early career, quite frankly. Outside of that, you have Command to target will saves. Command doesn't do damage, but it does force enemies to waste actions, falling prone, running away, dropping weapons, and then they have to spend another action just to pick it back up. Serious value, and if you're clever or creative with your team, you can really abuse it for some good things. Command scales well. Command is a spell that you'll keep using both at low levels and at high levels. It's just always kind of a good pick. Unfortunately, what's not always a good pick under the support spells is Runic Weapon. This is the best spell in the game from levels 1 to 3. Straight up, until you get striking weapons on your frontliners, Runic Weapon will give them a striking weapon and allow them to just annihilate their enemies with ease. Once they get those, say goodbye to Runic Weapon, take something else. You're a cleric, that's easy. Such as Bless. Take Bless. It's an aura that gives a +1 to hit bonus on the team. I know you're thinking, Lord Generic, don't I want to be in the back? Well, as a cleric, you make a great midliner, and also, you can increase the Bless aura with actions. You don't have to spend actions each round on it, but you can choose to make the aura ever larger and encompass the whole room or the whole battlefield quite easily. Protection is another rare buff that increases your armor class. This is, frankly, incredibly rare to get a status bonus to armor class, so protection is a really good pre-buff if you're going to ambush someone or if you're about to kick open a door and fight the monsters within. Consider some protection buffs on the front line. They'll love it. Sanctuary is kind of similar in that way. Sanctuary prevents your team from getting hurt, or at least attempts to, but your team, whoever is cast on, can't attack themselves, no offensive actions. So while this most obvious use is for someone running away or to protect an NPC that you care about being attacked by goblins or oozes or what have you, it also has some serious creative value. Consider using Sanctuary to, say, block off a doorway with yourself or a friendly party member, and then they take support actions to help their team while getting in the way of the enemy. Now they can't get through without tumble through or to attack someone that they have serious penalties against. And as long as you aren't attacking, Sanctuary remains. The lock spell can be used in a similar way. While it seals doorways and its obvious use is to use lock when you're exploring or when you're camping and resting for the night to stay safe, you can also use it mid-combat. Get a teammate, get a party member to close a door and seal off half of the enemies in a room, and then cast lock on it. Seal them in. They have to break down the door or pick the lock in order to get through. You can divide and conquer at low levels and just crush tough encounters with strategies such as this. Alarm is not as good in combat, but a really nice spell out of combat for resting safely. Consider picking up a wand of it when you have the money at higher levels. And Helpful Steps, you want scrolls of Helpful Steps. This spell has proven incredibly effective and versatile in my experience. What it does is it makes a 40-foot staircase on demand. It's a spiral staircase going straight up. Think of how many uses that is. Is there a cliff? Helpful Steps. Is there a pit? Going down. Helpful Steps. Do you need to infiltrate a castle or get over a wall? Helpful Steps. It's silent. It's effective. It's easy to use, and your whole party benefits. This spell rules. And Infused Vitality is a very specific anti-undead buff, giving positive energy damage to your attacks, also known as vitality damage, for 3 teammates. Carry some scrolls of this, and if undead show up, you just pop this baby out and carve through them like candy. If you're in an undead heavy campaign, then shoot, just memorize the spell and get serious value. I'll be honest, rank 2 divine spells do not impress me as a whole. They're okay and have some strong utility picks, but With that said, at damage you have Inner Radiance Torrent. This is a really funny spell because it allows you to cast it for 2 actions, 3 actions, or 6 actions. That's right, you can spend 2 turns casting a single attack spell for massive damage. And I'll call out this spell for never being errata, never being fixed. It was given an outrageously high scaling rate every time you upcast it another rank. Inner Radiance Torrent does massive damage at high ranks, but it's not practical. Don't take this spell thinking it's good. Take it because it's really funny. Outside of that, Blood Vendetta is pretty solid. The bleed damage on reaction is nice. You can use it to pop some persistent damage on an enemy that your team isn't focusing down, but persistence damage itself is more valuable at mid and higher levels. From levels 1 to 4, your enemies will tend to go down in only a couple of hits. They won't last long enough for that bleed to get its maximum value out. And speaking of sustained value, you also get Spiritual Armament. Anyone who's used to Dungeons and Dragons of old, this is also known as Spiritual Weapon. You make a weapon, and then every time you sustain it each round, it takes a swing at someone. It teleports around, it lets you get attacks and decent damage off, while also casting cantrips for even more damage. Combine it with a saving throw spell, such as Void Warp. You don't want more than 1 attack roll on a turn, and you'll get some serious value. When it comes to debuffs, you actually get some interesting picks at rank 2. Revealing Light completely hard counters invisible enemies, concealed enemies. It's a nice pick against certain foes, but it has value outside of that in that it dazzles your enemies. Dazzle is a very powerful condition, giving them a chance to just miss attacks that they would have landed. And Ghoulish Cravings, I'm going to point out, while it is a touch spell and therefore quite dangerous to use at melee range for you, it targets will save but sickens your foe. Sicken is an incredibly powerful condition, and it's usually found entirely on fortitude saves. This being available on a will save is worth mentioning as something you should consider. Last, your support spells, Divine Specialty. You get Cleanse Affliction, Clear Mind, and Sound Body. These spells all do the same thing. They cure different debuffs. The nature of them, though, as counteract spells, mean you will want to carry these at high ranks. You want to upcast these into your higher ranks to ensure they are effective. If you don't do that, it's going to be a bit unfortunate, I'm afraid. It might not work. Resist Energy, though, is fantastic if you have any reason to suspect you're fighting enemies that do the same thing. You're going into a fire dungeon, an acid dungeon, you're fighting a black dragon or an ice worm. Take Resist Energy and you can save a lot of pain from happening. Last, Dispel Magic is a classic spell versus enemy casters. You can turn off buffs, you can counter illusions, deactivate things, good roleplay value, good combat value, but again, you're going to need to upcast it. You want to take Dispel Magic at some of your highest spell ranks, because if it's not at the highest ranks, its value drops off massively. This means most of the rank 2 divine spells are like okay, but they don't have huge value as you keep leveling. You're going to be wondering what to do with these spells besides taking more rank 1 spells at rank 2. Well, that's a struggle. Now at rank 3, this is always a solid power spike for any caster, and you're no exception, though it's not as big as an arcane caster or primal caster might enjoy. You get some solid damage picks if Holy Light, or as I call it, Undead Be Gone. This is a armor class targeting attack roll spell that only targets one enemy, but if you hit an undead with this, that guy is toast. It will do 10d6 fire and vitality damage. That is wildly powerful. Wildly powerful. If you're a gambling type, consider Holy Light. Otherwise, Rouse Skeletons is a pretty good pick. It's a light amount of damage on a reflex save, but you can sustain it and create difficult terrain that keeps moving every time you sustain it. So you're getting low damage and some battlefield control every round. For longer fights, this is a pretty good pick. Shout out to Sarenrae worshippers. If Sarenrae is the deity that you choose to follow, you get access to Fireball at rank 3. What else is there to say? It's your classic Fireball. Big radius, decent damage across a group, targets reflex saves. This spell patches up a lot of your weaknesses as a divine caster, so Sarenrae worshippers, they're eating good. Outside of that, your support spells are starting to take off at rank 3. Heroism is the classic super buff, but it's only a +1 at this point. Frankly, I would just use the Bless spell until you hit rank 6 Heroism, when it jumps up to a +2 bonus. Protection, though, is very good at rank 3, giving you a 10-foot area around your target of an armor class buff. AoE armor class buffs are nearly unheard of, quite frankly, so that's a very valuable effect. And this is something you'll want to scroll of. You don't want to take this as a memorized spell, but consider carrying Anointed Ground. It requires 1 minute of prep time to cast the thing, so it's useless if you're not prepared, but it gives you a massive buff against any undead or demon attacks. If you're in a campaign where you might expect to be holding out against groups of undead or extraplanar enemies, Anointed Ground is unbelievable. With that said, the best rank 3 spells are your debuffs. This is where Divine shines at rank 3. You get Roaring Applause, which is a really strong spell. It turns off the reactions of your enemy even if they make the saving throw, and every time you sustain it, you trigger Reactive Strike for any melee characters because they have to applause, right? They have to clap. That clap has a manipulate trait, which means anyone with reactive strike, such as a fighter, gets an attack. Consider upcasting the Fear spell to rank 3. It becomes an area of effect spell at this point, targeting up to 10 targets. This is a fantastic debuff and very powerful against groups or crowds of enemies. You'll get a lot of failures, maybe even some crit failures if you hit groups of lower level foes, and that really enables your team to carve through them like candy. Agonizing Despair is a single target equivalent to this. It adds a little bit of light damage, and the Frightened debuff, which is as powerful as always. Use this against bosses, use this against single target enemies. And last, Mind of Menace is a very interesting spell. It's a 24-hour long-term buff that when someone hits you with a mental effect, as a reaction, you can frighten your enemy, which, because they're frightened, that means the DC of the mental effect you're saving against goes down, right? It's a very interesting spell. Consider this when you're higher levels and you don't have as much value for your third ranked spells. Mind of Menace is a fantastic slot to put in. It's also pretty good as a wand for the same reason. Rank 4 spells. This is where you shine as a divine caster. This is where you become more than a mere priest. You become a linchpin and tower of the party. You get some incredible damage spells at rank 4 with the premier spell Divine Wrath. It's not as damaging as what other casters may have, but it's a massive AoE targeting Fortitude that does not friendly fire and applies the Sickened debuff on any enemy who fails the save. I would like to remind you that the Sickened debuff never goes away on its own. In order to get rid of Sickened, your enemies have to spend an action attempting to beat your caster DC to reduce Sickened by 1. That means Sickened not only reduces their stats, it also wastes their actions. So Divine Wrath is an AoE that can't hurt your friends, it does damage to enemies, it debuffs their stats, and it takes away actions. Unbelievable value. There's also Painful Vibrations. This is more of a single target equivalent that targets Fortitude. It applies Sickened, it does better damage, and it applies the Deafened condition. Deafened doesn't do very much unless your enemies have a bard buffing them, or they're a caster. If you have an enemy who's a wizard or a caster, hit them with Painful Vibrations and the Deafened condition might cause them to fail their spells. We also have some solid AoE damage over time effects. Sanguine Miss is a Fortitude target that does a burst of damage when you cast it, but you can keep sustaining it to leave a damage zone in the area. Consider having your friends grapple enemies on the edge of the mist to hold them into it. That'll create a nice cheese grater effect, I like to say. You're holding them into it and it's just grinding away at their health. You'll get a lot of damage. Also fantastic for choke point battles. In the same way, Whisperers of the Void is an interesting spell that targets Fortitude. It does persistent damage, but I'm going to call it out for applying the Drained effect. Drained is very rare. It reduces Fortitude saves, which for you as a Divine Caster is very valuable, but it also reduces enemy HP directly. Drained puts in a lot of power, and it's hard to get. Your control spells are no slouch at rank 4 either. Consider Pernicious Poltergeist. This is an incredibly rare spell. Targets all saving throws. That's right. It has every time you sustain Pernicious Poltergeist, you can choose to target Reflex, Fortitude, or Will for different effects. You can do an AoE damage, a single target damage, or an AoE Frightened debuff. That's unbelievable. This spell is good for all situations. It's good in choke points, it's good for debuffs, it's good for single target if you can hold an enemy in it. It's just darn valuable. Silence. You can upcast the Silence spell to rank 4 and it becomes an AoE bubble of pure silence on whoever you cast it on. This isn't that useful for casting on enemies. What it is good for is casting on friends. You have a fighter, a monk, someone who likes to grab enemies and grapple. Hit them with a high-level silence spell, and then they can run off and grab an enemy caster, grab a wizard, grab a cleric. That guy can't cast spells anymore. He can't make noise. He's done. He can't do anything. You win the fight. It's just that easy. Silence has very specific value. It's not always useful, but when it is, it's unbelievable. And last, you can cast Fly at rank 4. It's Fly. I don't know what else to say. It allows you to fly. This is valuable. Let's head to rank 5. Rank 5 is a classic power spike for most characters. You don't get Wall of Stone, unlike in arcane casters, and that is sad, but what you do get is still pretty darn good. A lot of damage picks come online at rank 5. For those who don't worship Sarenrae for Fireball, you get access to Divine Immolation. It might not be the strongest of reflex spells, but one, it's called Divine Immolation, which is just cool. And it does constant persistent fire damage, which means for enemies weak to fire or weak to holy effects, because you are a cleric and therefore you can have holy or unholy power on your spells, this is going to trigger weakness over and over and over for massive value. Outside of that, you get Inevitable Disaster for single target damage. This is a delayed effect that targets Fortitude, but it does 55 damage. If they make the Fortitude save, they take half, which is what, like 28, I think? Pretty good for a single target spell. That's really high on the damage curve. When it comes to targeting Will, you take Mirror Malefactors. This is a solid sustained damage spell that keeps Frighten 1 on the target, but I'll note it causes constant will saves every time you sustain it, with the spell ending if they pass a will save. So I recommend only using this spell on enemies with low will saves. Try and get you or a teammate to hit them with a Bon Ma ability, or just Frightened if you have to, although the spell applies that. Bon Ma will keep their will save a little bit lower, and every point counts when you get damage every time they fail, right? Last, pick Rip the Spirit. Rip the Spirit is just good. It's a multi-action spell. It's variable, so you can do 1 action, 2 action, 3 actions. It's a spell that targets Fortitude, which is common, you have a lot of that, and it does damage plus Drained. Drained, as we mentioned, incredibly rare, incredibly valuable, and because you can either single target this or do a big cone AoE to Rip the Spirit, that adds a lot of versatility, which is always a caster's friend. Though, competing for the slots is going to be hard, as we see in the support side. You get Breath of Life at rank 5. This is a reaction spell heal that triggers when a friend dies. If someone dies, no they don't. Breath of Life prevents death outright. That is wild. Your friends can play super risky. They can be way more risky once you have this. It's really hard to justify not having 1 cast of Breath of Life on any divine caster I ever consider making. It's just that good. You also have some okay control with Wall of Flesh. It's not the best wall spell. It's kind of gross. It can have hands that reach out and grab people, so that's cool. But it is a wall spell, and walls are strong, man. You divide the battlefield up, that's just good. And last, this is mostly a roleplay value, but it's got a lot of roleplay value. Don't sleep on Sending. Sending lets you send a short message to one person you know. This is really good. If you need to send a secret message to the king, or the rebel leader, or your friend because you're coming home and you want them to bake some apple pies for you to eat when you get there, cast Sending. That's just nice. Rank 6 is another huge spell for Divine. Are you starting to catch what I'm putting down? Once you hit rank 4 and above, Divine is just an incredible list. At rank 6, you get the choice of Spirit Blast, which is something I don't recommend. It's a single target Fortitude save nuke that does crazy high damage. That's not the most useful thing in the world, but if you like rolling big dice for big damage, consider Spirit Blast. You'll feel good when someone fails that save and just gets blown up. For AoE effects, you get Awaken Entropy, which is a fascinating zone control spell, doing constant damage every turn you sustain it, but the zone grows with time. So you'll have to be very careful with Awaken Entropy to not catch your own party in the expanding death zone. On the other hand, I just used the words expanding death zone, and if that triggers your interest, then consider Awaken Entropy. And Blessed Boundary is another fantastic spell. It creates a semicircle wall that is up to 60 feet, so you can make it smaller and make a custom size boundary based on your needs and the battlefield that does damage to any enemies who start their turn in it or walk into the boundary, which also means you can shove people with force movement into the boundary and trigger extra instances of damage. Best part is, if they fail the reflex save, they get shoved out of the boundary in your choice of direction, which means you can really bounce enemies into it over and over for massive value, massive damage, and massive control if your team works with you. This spell is going to work best with people who like to shove, maybe monks with whirling throw, effects like that work together for the best value. And your support is really good here too. You can get upcasted heroism to rank 6, at which point it becomes a god tier buff. +2 to attacks, skills, and saving throws. That's so good. It lasts for 10 minutes and is a really easy spell to cast before you start fights with that long of a duration. So good. So strong. And True Sight, this is a lot of value depending on your game. True Sight's main purpose is to counter illusion spells and invisibility effects. It lets you see reality as it is. If your game has a lot of invisible enemies or often uses illusions or fey opponents perhaps, True Sight's amazing. If it doesn't, well, don't take it. Zealous Conviction is another great pick. This is a strong pre-buff. Again, rank 6, good for pre-battle buffing. If you have time, try and get ambushes, scout ahead. This is where the value comes in. This is an AoE temp health increase, so you get a small shield for your team, and it boosts their will save against mental effects. While this is more specific, consider picking up some scrolls of Zealous Conviction. You won't always want it. I personally would probably take some of the powerful damage and zone control spells in my ranks and prepared spells, but sometimes you'll want a scroll of Zealous Conviction when the time is right, and then you'll be glad you spent a small amount of cash on it. Rank 7 is another huge one for Divine. Again, it's all winning from here on up. You get access to some of the best attack spells in the game with Eclipse Burst and Sunburst. These are massive 60-foot wide AoEs. They do friendly fire, so if anything, they are too big to the point of danger, but they do fantastic damage. You are taking the same spells that Divine and Primal casters are getting at this rank, feel good and feel strong. But you get some unique ones yourself. Divine Decree is a pretty cool spell. It's a big AoE blast, again, that targets Fortitude, and is party safe. It won't hurt your friends, it does not friendly fire, and it applies Enfeebled to the enemy. Personally, I think Divine Wrath is a little nicer in my opinion, because I love Sickened as an effect, but Divine Decree is some solid damage output, and Enfeeble's still a good debuff. Last, Tempest of Shades is what's called an Incarnate spell. It has 2 effects, one that occurs when you cast it, and one that occurs at the end of your next turn. So, it's multiple debuffs over time. With that said, it starts with a Fortitude save that drains your enemies, and then when it leaves, there's a will save that frighten your enemies. This is party safe. That's a lot of debuff value for a single spell. Against tough fights or large groups, Tempest of Shades is a great pick. Your support's pretty decent here too. Consider Regenerate, which is a constant healing effect, 15 HP per round. You have access to the heal spell, so this is less valuable naturally to you, but there's a fun trick to Regenerate. If it's not deactivated by fire, acid, or death effects, anyone with Regeneration cannot die. They can't be killed. Now, they won't wake up if they go past dying 4, but they can't be killed. So be creative. You can use Regenerate to avoid some absurd effects that should kill characters, but guess you'll just walk it off, right? Also consider Shock to the System. This is a buff and healing spell with a lot of uses, and I mean a lot. It's a revive spell. If someone dies and you couldn't hit them with Breath of Life, you can revive them with Shock to the System if you hit them the next turn. That alone is great. It's a heal spell. Not a huge heal, but it is healing. And it applies haste, so we're getting some good value. And it applies hidden to your friends for 1 turn. Again, this is a lot of buffs, right? And last, it lets them cast a 5th rank Thunderstrike spell every time they want for the next minute. That has some serious great value. Cast this on your friendly wizard or any other caster who uses spells, and they can throw out 5d12 plus 5d4 pretty much at will. That saves their spell slots. It lets them go hard on a different fight, still doing really good damage in this fight. Casters are about resource management, and you can abuse Shock to the System to get a lot of resources for free. I only consider that if you're doing a crazy long adventuring day, but hey, it happens, right? Last, Inexhaustible Cynicism is a very odd debuff. It forces your multiple enemies to no longer consider each other as allies. So what that means is if you're fighting a skilled team of enemy operatives, maybe they have casters buffing them, maybe they have a bard or a investigator shouting out orders, or a healer healing their friends, well, they're no longer friends. They don't heal each other, they don't buff each other. You can waste enemy actions with this as well. It forces them to spend either waste actions once per round or take a small amount of damage, but hey, it adds up. This is a very specific spell. I wouldn't use it all of the time. Maybe consider a scroll of Inexhaustible Cynicism, but when it works, oh baby, that's good. Rank 8. Oh, we got some of my favorites on the entire spell list here. Starting with Summon Elemental Herald. This spell, it takes 3 actions to cast, so it's a big investment, but it calls down the elemental of your choice. There's so many options, all sorts of AoE shapes. They don't hurt your teammates. They are party safe. They can target reflex or fortitude. You can pick lots of elemental damage types. You can choose to send enemies flying. You can choose to knock enemies prone. You can choose to do persistent fire damage over time. This spell rules. It's so good. If you don't know what you're going into for the next day's fights, you will always get value from Summon Elemental Herald. It's super good. There are other good picks though. Spirit Song is a fantastic damage cone, targeting fortitude, that turns off enemy reactions. Pretty good in its own right, but it has the ability to inflict stunned. So you're doing damage, you're turning off reactions, and you're potentially wasting enemy actions entirely. It's a lot of mixed value. Last, there is Divine Armageddon. I don't think it's the strongest spell, I'll be honest. But you are a cleric. You are a mighty agent of your deity. You speak to the Lord and the Lord speaks back. Are you not going to take a chance to bring down Divine Armageddon upon your enemies? You gotta cast it at least once, right? This is a massive damage AoE that will friendly fire, so be careful. And it's not remastered. This spell technically deals alignment damage, which no longer exists in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Talk to your game master and ask if it can just do spirit damage. Everything that did do alignment damage that was reworked, it's the same, it just does spirit damage now, so it's not a big homebrew effect, okay? And you get some amazing support spells as well. Call out to Moment of Renewal. This is a crazy heal bomb. It lets you touch up to 5 party members, including yourself, and every single person gets healing and the effects of 24 hours passing. Think about what that means. So it's a good heal based on your team getting a night's rest effectively, although it does not refresh their spell slots, sorry. Any drained effects on your friends? Any doomed effects? Are they frightened? Is there anything that's timed? Well, 24 hours have passed. It's probably gone. This is a debuff cleanse. This is a heal bomb. This is just really darn good. It's tough to hit multiple friends with a touch range, so consider pairing it with the reach spell feat. It's a first rank feat you have access to as a cleric. It's going to make it a lot easier to cast Moment of Renewal, giving it a 30-foot reach, but it's not necessary. And we have Canticle of Everlasting Grief. This is an odd one. It targets will saves and does a light amount of damage and frighten. But most importantly is it prevents your target from benefiting from any status or circumstance bonuses. You turn off buffs. If you have enemies that use heroism, use bless, use guidance, use aid on their friends, anything like that, Canticle of Everlasting Grief will turn that off and frankly make your fight into a cakewalk. This is a specific spell, but when it works, the value is insane. You'll be the immediate MVP of the team. Now, as for rank 9 spells, there aren't very many rank 9 spells, but you can upcast so many of your other options at this point. It's frankly easier to just stick to a few spells and pick whatever your favorites are and make those better, right? With that said, Wails of the Damned is a fantastic pick here. It's an AoE that doesn't hit your party, targets Fortitude, it does damage, and it applies Drained. But it applies 1d4 Drained. That's really good. And since Drained does damage based on level, you're casting a rank 19 spell. Your level is high. Your enemy's level is high. Drained does a lot of free damage here. Also, you can get Heroism at rank 9. This spell is so good. Frankly, I have a hard time recommending anything besides all Heroism spells in every slot. Rank 9 Heroism gives a +3 status bonus to one friend's attack, skills, and saving throws. +3. That is a 15% chance to crit every attack. That's a 15% chance to crit every grapple, every trip, every skill action. That's a chance to crit succeed every saving throw. That's so crazy strong on anyone. It's hard to beat that in terms of value for anything. Though Foresight's pretty good. This is a single target buff that allows you to use your reaction to force a defensive reroll. So if an enemy attacks whoever's buffed, you can spend your reaction to force them to reroll that attack. Or it allows them to reroll a saving throw against an offensive spell. This is a purely defensive thing. If you don't use your reaction very often in your cleric build, Foresight can get a lot of value and keep someone safe in a deadly battle. Last, this is a very interesting one, Proliferating Eyes. It's like contagious vision. You cast this spell and the next person you touch, you can see what they see. And the next person they touch, you can see what that person sees. And the next person that person touches, you can see what that person sees. And so on and so forth, up to 48 people. You can use this to infiltrate bases, get information on dungeons, learn what your enemies are doing, get the drop on intelligence meetings. It's really powerful in a role-playing sense. And remember, Pathfinder isn't just combat. This is a role-playing game and stories matter. Things like Proliferating Eyes might save everyone and change the course of the story. And finally, the mighty Ultimate Magic's rank 10 divine spells. I know you're thinking, hey generic, there's like nothing here. I don't think rank 10 divine spells are that good. I hate to say it. The only ones I particularly like are Nullify, which allows you to counterspell any 9th rank or lower spell at the cost of hurting you, but like, you can just counterspell anything? That is battlefield warping, because hey, the evil Lich King casts a deadly kill spell or summons meteors from the sky or calls in a powerful ally and you're just like, no, he doesn't. You know what? His whole turn's gone. Screw him. That's crazy. That's good. And Manifestation. This is your divine equivalent to the Wish spell. Manifestation lets you cast any 9th rank divine spell or any 7th rank spell from a different list. Crazy versatility. You might be asking, hey generic, what's the best spells for that? Bro, I don't know. It has unmatched versatility, and versatility means unmatched power and use cases. But that's about it for the good divine spells in my opinion. Now, outside of spells, which we really can't summarize, if you're looking for just the complete build, here you are, all your nice little feats in a bundle. This is a practically focused build to keep just about any Cloistered Cleric effective. The main things you need to focus on are staying alive, get your armor class to the cap with armor proficiency, make sure your wisdom and your dex and your constitution are as high as they can go. You'll be solid. The divine font feature means you always get a lot of extra heal spells, and that spell is really good. But I will stress again, and again, you aren't a healer. You are a cleric. Healing is just one of your strengths. Don't fill your entire spell list with the heal spell. Fill it with different spells so that you can handle lots of situations and end encounters much sooner. If all you do is heal the front line, then they're just going to stand in front of an enemy and take hits, trading blows. It's a very inefficient way for everyone to fight. It's going to be grueling. It's not going to be very fun or satisfying for just about anyone. Make those heals count, make them big, flashy, and important, but also throw out other powerful spells. As we described, you get a lot of options in the divine list. So, let's make use of them, huh? But that's really all we can do to help without something more specific. Cloistered Clerics can really build in a lot of choices. Feel free to pick just about any archetype that appeals to you if that's your style, and make sure to have fun, okay? We'll be sure to keep things going, keep more builds flowing, and pretty soon I'm going to work on some solid guides to just the spells themselves, the different divine lists, the arcane list, and so on. That way I can just link to the darn thing every time I make a caster build instead of recording. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. It's so long. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I'd love to see you come back, and we'll check out some more builds next time.